The real reason Man United are chasing Ederson. Manchester United agreed to sign Ederson. Then they almost walked away from their own transfer. Not because of money, not because a rival club swooped in, because of one word buried in his medical report. This is the real story of Manchester United's chase for Atalanta midfielder Ederson. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why United wanted him so badly, what actually went wrong behind the scenes, and what they did instead when the deal nearly collapsed. First, let's clear up the confusion. The player everyone's talking about isn't the Ederson you're picturing in goal for Manchester City. This is a different Ederson entirely. A Brazilian box-to-box midfielder, 26 years old, built at Atalanta under Gianpiero Gasperini, one of the most respected coaches in Italian football at developing raw talent into the finished product. This Ederson joined Atalanta for around 12 to 19 million pounds back in 2022 and turned into one of the most complete midfielders in Serie A. So why did Manchester United want him so badly? Here's the real reason. United's midfield has been quietly falling apart for years. Casemiro, once one of the best defensive midfielders on the planet, is approaching the end of his career and has looked a step slower every season. United kept patching the position with loans and short-term fixes instead of solving it properly. Ederson was the answer to a problem United had been avoiding for 3 straight transfer windows. He tackles, he carries the ball forward, he scores from midfield, and at 26, he's exactly the age where a club buys a player to build around for the next 5 years, not just plug a gap for one season. This wasn't a new idea either. United had actually been linked with Ederson as far back as 2024, when Casemiro's decline first became impossible to ignore. Back then, the interest never went anywhere, partly because Atalanta refused to entertain offers, and partly because United had other priorities. But the itch never went away. Every transfer window since, his name kept resurfacing on United's shortlist, quietly climbing higher each time Casemiro had another difficult game. By this summer, the club under their new football structure finally treated it as a priority instead of a nice-to-have. And United weren't the only ones who noticed. Manchester City scouted him. Liverpool made an inquiry. Barcelona's director was reportedly a big admirer. Even Atletico Madrid nearly got a deal over the line first. This wasn't a hidden gem United found by luck. This was one of the most contested midfielders in Europe, and United still won the race, agreeing a deal worth somewhere between 35 and 39 million pounds, verbally settled all the way back in early June. Part of the reason United won that race wasn't even about money. Reports at the time said Ederson had personally communicated that he wanted to join United over any other suitor once their interest became serious. For a club that's been repeatedly snubbed by top targets in recent years, having a player actively choose them for once was a genuinely big deal internally. It's the kind of signal that made the club move quickly to get an agreement locked in before anyone else could change his mind. Here's the part that changes everything, though. The deal wasn't actually finished. It just looked finished. Ederson went off to play the World Cup with Brazil, and the paperwork sat waiting for him to come back. When he returned, United sent him for a medical, the standard final step before any transfer becomes official. And that's when things got complicated. Reports out of England suggested the medical flagged concerns about his knee, specifically a history of meniscus problems that raised questions about whether this was a one-off injury or the start of a longer-term issue. For a club spending nearly 40 million pounds on a player they wanted for half a decade, that's not a small red flag. It's the kind of detail that decides whether a transfer happens at all. So United did something most fans never get to see up close. They asked for a second medical, not because the first one was wrong, but because when this much money and this many years are on the line, clubs don't take chances on ambiguous results. That second examination became the real deciding moment. Sources close to the situation said United were prepared to walk away entirely if the follow-up exam confirmed the worst. Think about how strange that is from the outside. A deal agreed in June. A player who publicly said he wanted United over every other suitor chasing him. A transfer fee already negotiated down to specific numbers. And it still nearly fell apart in July over a knee scan. Atalanta, for their part, were reportedly stunned. Their new sporting director confirmed the move had broken down, and the Italian club quietly pivoted to opening contract renewal talks with Ederson instead, as if bracing for the deal to never happen. That's not a normal reaction to a transfer that's simply taking time to finalize. That's a club preparing for the possibility that their best midfielder isn't leaving after all. And here's the twist that really shows how United operate under their current ownership structure. Instead of waiting around hoping the medical issue would resolve itself, they move fast in a completely different direction. While the Ederson saga was still technically unresolved, United completed a £50 million deal for Chelsea's Andre Santos. They also triggered a release clause to sign Yuri Tielemans from Aston Villa for around £36 million. In other words, United didn't wait to find out if their number one target would pass a scan. They quietly built a Plan B and a Plan C and activated both before Plan A was even confirmed dead or alive. That's the real story here. This isn't really about one Brazilian midfielder and one knee injury. It's about how differently a modern Manchester United handles risk compared to the club that used to gamble everything on one marquee signing every summer. A single ambiguous medical result was enough to pause a deal worth tens of millions, and rather than panic or overpay to force it through, the club simply built redundancy into their transfer plan. They kept the door open on Ederson at a lower price and structure, while making sure the midfield got fixed either way. For fans, that's actually the most reassuring part of the whole saga. It would have been easy to sign a player with an ambiguous knee history purely because rivals wanted him too, just to avoid missing out. Instead, United let the medical evidence make the decision instead of emotion or fear of missing out. That discipline is exactly what critics have accused this club of lacking for years. So where does this leave things? As of now, the original deal isn't dead, but it isn't happening at the original price either. United could still return before the transfer window closes if Ederson's price or contract terms change, and Atalanta haven't ruled out selling if the number's right. But for the moment, Manchester United have already solved their midfield problem two different ways, without needing this one deal to go through at all. And that's the real reason Manchester United were chasing Ederson. Not because he was the only answer, because for a few weeks this summer, he was the best one available until a knee scan reminded everyone that even a perfect transfer target still has to pass one final test before any of the interest, the fee, or the reported preference actually means anything at all. Deals like this happen every single window, quietly without fans ever hearing about the medical, the second exam, or the backup plan being built in parallel. The only reason this one became public is that it dragged on long enough and mattered enough for the details to leak out. Most transfer sagas that look simple on the surface, a fee agreed, a shirt number picked, a welcome video ready to go, are hiding exactly this kind of behind-the-scenes tension right up until the ink actually dries.